It was Tuesday after lunch when I noticed the door. I was walking back from the equipment cupboard to restock my phlebotomy tray when I passed Dr. Clark's room and stopped. The examination couch that usually sat unused against that stretch of wall was gone. In its place was a wooden door, the same as all the consultation rooms, with the number 19 hanging on it in cheery blue numerals. A name card was slotted into the holder. Dr. Skinner. I stood, staring for a moment, and promptly dropped my stack of blood bottles all over the floor. "Fuck," I whispered as I bent to scoop them up. Martha, the sickeningly chipper HCA, appeared from around the corner. "Ooh, oh, butterfingers." She grinned at me as she dropped to stop the scattering vials. "Thanks, Martha," I muttered, standing. I forgot about the door as we marched along the corridor, fending off her questions with polite replies. I shook her off finally and closed my door, breathing a sigh of relief. My first patient of the afternoon surgery was one of my regulars, Susan Morris. Susan was your typical worried well, always with a catalogue of vague symptoms requiring broad tests. She chatted away as I scanned the request form, nodding politely but tuning her out. I paused. Asterisk prion exposure. Asterisk I clicked the panel. I frowned. I'd never come across anything like this. Asterisk the only prion diseases I've heard about were that one that killed all those cows in the 90s, and wasn't there that one with the African tribe? Shouldn't neurology be handling this? Asterisk Susan. What did the GP say about the blood tests they wanted you to have? Oh, Dr. Skinner was really concerned about my symptoms. He said he wanted to rule a few things out. He's ever so good. I looked at Susan, confused, and noticed the clock behind her asterisk shit, running late already. Asterisk, I took her blood and chivied her out of my room. The afternoon wore on as usual. I looked in ears, dressed wounds, vaccinated screaming children. At 16:00, I plodded exhausted into the kitchenette for a cup of tea. Martha was in there, gossiping away to the lead nurse, Becky. I smiled non-committally as I leaned over to turn the kettle on. Honestly, it just seems like she's not coping, bless her. She completely buggered up the stock order, and it was a nightmare sorting out more scalpels for Dr. Skinner's clinic. Who's Dr. Skinner? Is he a new trainee or something? Martha and Becky looked at me strangely, then exchanged a glance. "Oh, Becky, did you manage to get those shingles vaccines in?" asked Martha. My stomach twisted. She always did this. Always had to make me feel small, out of place. I felt my face grow warm as I turned away. I let their chatter fade to a background hum as I stirred my tea. Anyway, I was reading the notes on Core Record, and it turns out he was having an affair. I looked up. "Don't you mean Care Record?" Martha turned to look at me. "God, what's wrong with you today? You okay?" She laughed. I smiled weakly, sweat breaking across my back. Back in my room, I hurriedly unlocked my computer and pulled up my afternoon list. There, in mundane grey lettering, was the system name, Core Record. My stomach dropped, but it had always been Care Record. My thoughts were interrupted by Becky knocking on my door. "Can you see this next patient for me? Reception's bloody double booked again." Michael Jones sat in my chair looking bored. I pulled up his patient record. "What's brought you in today, Michael?" "I don't know. A receptionist called me and said something about a screening appointment." "Do you know what type of screening you need?" "You're the nurse, aren't you? It should be in my notes." I smiled politely and looked back at the screen. Asterisk, 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 Dr. A. Skinner, 27/01/2025 00 asterisk, 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 screening invite sent for assessment of baseline metabolic health and tissue quality prior to intervention. Check HB, ferritin, protein markers, CRP, prion exposure and micronutrient balance. BMI, BP and pulse check please. Asterisk, I frowned and looked at Michael. He was 29, fit and healthy, and I could see no prior medical history on his notes. Was this a research thing I didn't know about? Michael looked back at me disdainfully. "Looks like it's just routine screening. Best you speak to the GP when we get the results. They should be able to tell you more." I was carrying my sample tray to the pathology room when I bumped into Dr. Clark. Oh, yeah, just dropping off Dr. Skinner's screening samples. Do you know if he's doing a research project or something? Oh, I don't think so. Just his special interest. Sorry, got to run. I'm slammed on triage this evening. He half ran up the corridor and back into his room. I watched him go, and my eyes fell upon the door. I walked up to it. It was so ordinary. Brown waxed wood metal handle, exactly the same as every other door in the practice. Except I had worked here for 3 years, and I could only ever remember there being 18 doors. In fact, I remembered 2 trainees having to share a room last year. I pressed my ear against the cool wood, listening for signs of life. All I could hear was a faint electrical hum. I knocked. No response. I pushed the door open. I stepped into the cool, dark room, and the overhead light blinked on. It was a typical GP's office. A wide desk, 2 monitors, a threadbare office chair. But I had never been in this room before. I looked around. A squat, off-white unit sat next to the desk, plugged into the wall. I inspected it closely, realizing that it was this that was giving off the low electrical whir. Behind a glass panel, a cylindrical tube was picking up blood bottles and inverting them once, twice, 3 times. The bottles were dropped into a slotted tray and disappeared from view. It wasn't a centrifuge, and it looked too big to be a point-of-care analyzer. Whatever it was processing. I stared, confused. I had never known a GP to process their own samples. Specimens were taken off-site for a reason, stored, logged, tracked. I wasn't even sure if this was legal, let alone ethical. A shrill, piercing siren made me jump out of my skin. I looked up at the wall unit which flashed the location of the emergency, room 15. I arrived at room 15 to see Martha already tending to an ashen, scared-looking patient on the floor. "Hi, Natalie. She just fainted having her bloods done." "No worries." "Hello, I'm Natalie, one of the nurses. Let's get your legs up," I said. "Martha, could you grab a glass of water and a pillow? What's your name, lovely?" "Elaine." "Harris," she said weakly as Martha bustled from the room. "Well, Elaine, don't worry, we'll get you sorted. Not a fan of having your blood taken." "No, it's not that. I'm usually fine, I give blood. I just feel awful all of a sudden." I looked at her pale, clammy face. Something was wrong. I pressed my fingers to her wrist, feeling her rapid, thready pulse. I felt her body stiffen under my hands. Her eyes rolled back and she began convulsing. "I need some help," I shouted down the corridor. I rushed back to Elaine, turning her onto her side. Martha appeared. "Martha, get me the oxygen and tell reception to ring for an ambulance. Do it now." Martha disappeared. I supported Elaine gently and the seizure continued. "Come on, Elaine, you'll be okay. Stay with me now." A gush of thick, black liquid spilled from her mouth. I recoiled, horrified. No, no, no. I knew instantly what it was. Upper GI bleed. Massive, catastrophic. Elaine's body slumped over. The seizure stopped abruptly. I rolled her back towards me. I felt her pulse. Nothing. I screamed for help again and began pumping her chest, tears rolling down my face. I watched numbly as the paramedics, Becky and Martha, attached the defibrillator and the bag valve mask and continued the fruitless effort to resuscitate. Still no pulse. She's been down for an hour now. "Stop compressions," the lead paramedic said. "Time of death 18:15. Elaine's blood was still under my fingernails. I sat at my desk, staring at my hands. Becky appeared, carrying a heavily sugared tea. "Yeah, fine," I lied. I accepted the hot drink, grateful for the warmth. Becky's concern evaporated, and she nodded briskly. "Well, I'm staying late too. I need to speak to the partners and Elaine's family. I'll be in my office if you need me." I understood that further discussion was not welcome. She left, and I opened Elaine's record. I scanned the notes to see if there was any explanation for what had just happened. My vision swam as I read. **** Dr. A. Skinner 28/01/2025-17. 00 **** patient attended for viability assessment prior to intervention. Completed tissue sampling, well tolerated. Safety discussed. Avoid NSAIDs/alcohol today. Reconnect directly with Dr. Skinner if concerned. Vomiting blood, black stools, dizziness. Please arrange bloods and follow up. Asterisk, my heart thudded in my chest. What the fuck had he done to her? What was I supposed to do now? I decided all I could do was finish my notes truthfully. I couldn't go running into Becky's office accusing a doctor of killing a patient. I'd seen nurses scapegoated for less. Asterisk, 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 nurse N. Porter 28/01/2025 54 asterisk, 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 attended room 15 in response to emergency bell. Patient found on floor, pale and unwell. HCA Martha in attendance. Initially appeared to have fainted following venipuncture. Legs elevated. PT reassured. PT deteriorated rapidly and began seizing. Requested emergency assistance. Moved into recovery position. PT vomited dark bloody material and lost consciousness. No signs of life. Unable to palpate pulse, so commenced CPR until paramedics arrived. PT pronounced dead at 18:15. Asterisk, I switched off the computer, gathered my things and turned off the light. As I rounded the corner to reception, I heard Martha's irritating laugh and paused, looking round. Martha was leaning back against the reception desk, phone in hand, laughing. Becky stood beside her, arms folded, nodding along. Between them stood a man I didn't recognize. He was average height, with dark hair that receded away from his temples. His shirt sleeves were rolled casually to his elbows. Around his neck was a blue lanyard. He gave a polite half smile at something Becky said and looked over in my direction. I felt it then, that cold certainty. I knew who he was before I read the name on the lanyard. None of them seemed even slightly upset. They just stood there, easy and relaxed like old friends. No one introduced the doctor. "You off then, Natalie?" Martha asked brightly. "See you tomorrow then. Don't forget, we need to get the women's health order in by close of play," said Becky. "No worries," I said, forcing myself to take measured steps through reception until I was out of sight. I broke down into sobs as I slammed my car door. Elaine was dead, and they were laughing. The next morning, I arrived at the surgery feeling sick. My sleep had been fretful, plagued by nightmares of Dr. Skinner doing something awful to Elaine behind the door. I walked past Sandra on reception, who gave me a cheery wave. I returned it feebly and shut myself in my room. I opened Core Record and hesitated, fingers over the keyboard, with the nagging sense that something was wrong. Was that the right name? I shook my head and pulled my list for the day. Bloods, vaccinations, infected wound. A notification popped up, catching my attention. I clicked it. Asterisk, 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 screening cohort eligibility, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Just a reminder, I am currently recruiting patients for a screening cohort as part of my special interest work. Asterisk, asterisk, we are looking to identify patients who are generally well, with no significant comorbidities, and good baseline physiological and nutritional status. Ideally, candidates should be asterisk, asterisk, no history of autoimmune or inflammatory disease, asterisk, asterisk, no medical or familial history of any neurodegenerative disease, including dementias or prion diseases, asterisk, asterisk, patients should be cognitively intact, able to tolerate procedures, and not currently under follow-up in secondary care. Asterisk, asterisk, initial screening involves baseline bloods and observations. Follow-up will be with me directly if results suggest eligibility. Asterisk, asterisk, please note that patients will asterisk, 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 not asterisk, 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 require any external referrals. All screening falls within existing practice protocols. Asterisk, asterisk, if you are unsure whether a patient is a candidate for screening, feel free to flag them for review. Asterisk, I read it twice. Then a third time, more slowly, unpacking the words. Young, healthy, normal, BMI, asterisk, able to tolerate procedures, asterisk. I saw Elaine's grey face. I scrolled down and checked the name again, as if looking would somehow change it. It didn't. Dr. Clark was senior partner. He had been since before I started. Of course, Dr. Skinner had been gunning for the job for years. I remembered the polite disagreements over commissioning, the careful way he phrased his objections in meetings, Becky's comments afterwards, rolling her eyes. You know how ambitious he is. Skinner's name had cropped up more and more over the years, covering meetings, leading initiatives. It made sense that he'd take over eventually. What I couldn't remember was when it had happened. No goodbye email from Dr. Clark, no cake in the staff room, nothing. I closed the message tab and typed Elaine Harris into the search bar. There on the journal was my note. **** Nurse N. Porter 28/01/2025 54 ****, attended room 15 in response to emergency bell. Patient found on floor, HCA Martha in attendance. PT stated she had been feeling unwell all day, appeared to have fainted following venipuncture. Legs elevated, PT reassured. PT stated she felt more unwell and requested ambulance. PT transferred to local DGH, family notified by Dr. Skinner. They will meet PT at the hospital. ***, I stared at it, mortified. I checked the administration panel to see who had edited my note. There was nothing there. Only that N. Porter had created the note at 18:54 the previous evening. I knew what I had written, what I had seen. Below my entry, Dr. Skinner had added an addendum. ****, Dr. A. Skinner 28/01/2025-21 30 ****, Telkin with receiving consultant. Sadly, Mrs. Harris passed away following transfer. Consensus that presentation was consistent with underlying hepatic pathology. Family present during death. Await coroner. ***. I sat back in my chair and folded my hands in my lap. They were shaking badly, so I held them there until they stopped. I tried to picture Elaine's face again. The image swam away from me in my mind. I couldn't remember the color of her hair. It occurred to me that whatever had happened last night was already decided. All I could do now was try and preserve my sanity. I opened my drawer and took out my notepad. I wrote quickly, * died of massive upper GI bleed. ***, I closed the notepad and slid it to the back of the drawer, covering it with a box of labels. My hand felt slightly numb, like I'd slept on it wrong. A knock sounded at my door, making me flinch and slam the drawer. Becky appeared in the doorway, wearing her "I need you to do something for me" smile. "Morning. Can I have a quick word?" Sure," I said, anxiety rising. I kept my hands flat on the desk to hide the tremor. "Dr. Skinner's moved his special interest clinic to Thursdays now. He's asked if you can support." "Support?" I asked, mouth going dry. "Yeah, just basic stuff. Observations, consent forms, passing him equipment and stuff. Nothing major. I've already moved things around," she said, smiling wider. "And obviously, it's important that we are seen to be supportive of the partners." She slid a sheet of paper across my desk. ***, special interest, clinic 30/01/2025 ***, H. Smith, mucosal integrity assessment ***B. Graham neurological exclusion screening ***. If you have any questions, best to go to Dr. Skinner directly. Got to go, partners meeting." She vanished from the room before I could speak. I spent the rest of the day suppressing my panic. The patients went by in a blur. I couldn't remember their faces. I was cleaning out a bucket in the sluice when Martha banged the door open, almost hitting me. "Becky's put you down for Dr. Skinner's clinic tomorrow." "No, just that he needed an assistant." "Right, it's usually me who runs clinics. And you haven't done the training, have you?" She just looked at me, the irritation visible on her face. "Well, let's know what he's doing." She opened the door and looked back at me. "Strange that he would pick you after Elaine," she added, coldly. By the time I realized it was Thursday, I was already in the building. I hung up my coat in the staff room and walked down the corridor past reception. Sandra gave me her usual friendly wave, and I smiled weakly at her. "Morning, Natalie. I hear you're working with Dr. Skinner today. Isn't he just brilliant?" All the patients love him. You're a lucky lady to have been picked. I mumbled an agreement and walked on to my room. As I was logging on to Core Record, there was a knock at the door. Becky bustled in, all business. "Hi, Natalie. Let's quickly run through the clinic. Dr. Skinner's already set up." My eyes fixed on the familiar sheet of paper, jaw set, heart pounding. "You'll be in the minor ops room. Dr. Skinner prefers to handle the patient consultations himself. I'd avoid talking too much, you know how he can get, and mind the sterile field. When the patient comes in, check their obs while Dr. Skinner goes through the consent form. When he gets them on the couch, just be ready to hand him whatever he asks for, and keep an eye on the monitor. He likes to make sure they stay viable." "Right, that should be everything. The first patient is in the waiting room." She nodded with finality and left the room. I sat for a moment, unreality washing over me. Dr. Skinner had been busy. The room was almost unrecognizable. It felt less like a minor ops suite and more like a complete theater. I took in the various objects lining the walls. A familiar electrical hum sounded from the corner, and I recognized the sample processor from the doctor's office, already switched on. I stepped over to the examination couch and inspected the sterile field that had been set up beside it. Various surgical instruments glinted in the light. Some were familiar, some I didn't recognize. My stomach lurched when I saw the bone saw. "Ready, Nurse Porter?" A high, cold voice asked behind me. Helen Smith sat nervously on the edge of the examination couch as I wrapped the blood pressure cuff around her arm. Dr. Skinner stood facing away from us, checking the consent form. "Have you been here long, nurse? I don't think I've seen you before. Oh God, I'm so nervous. I hate things like this. Got to be done though, I suppose. It's cold in here, isn't it?" Helen chatted incessantly. I managed a smile but couldn't bring myself to talk. "So, Mrs. Smith, today we are collecting a tissue sample as part of your screening. All very routine, no need to worry," said Dr. Skinner, back still to us. "Blood pressure is 130/74, I said quietly. Very good, whispered Dr. Skinner. "I see you've already consented to the procedure. Remove your shirt and lie back." Helen did as she was instructed. I turned my body slightly away, trying not to look as Dr. Skinner's long, pale fingers probed Helen's flesh. He traced the midline of her abdomen, gently palpated the right ribs, and applied pressure to the right upper quadrant. "TrueCut needle, please, nurse." I hesitated, eyeing the ultrasound probe that sat unplugged in the corner. "Surely he's not going in blind, Nurse Porter," the cold voice snapped, and I obeyed, gloved hand shaking slightly. In the back of my mind, a thought barely registered. He hasn't asked for anesthetic. You will feel a pinch. Stay perfectly still. My jaw clenched as I heard the sudden click and spring of the biopsy needle. "Oh, that felt strange. Is it supposed to feel like that?" Dr. Skinner ignored her. "Sample pot." I handed it over and watched as he dropped the liver tissue into the clear liquid. He adjusted his grip, repositioned the needle. Helen gasped as the doctor withdrew. I watched her fingers curl into the paper sheet. "Now, that wasn't so bad, was it? Nurse Porter will help you with a dressing." He walked over to the processor and carefully placed the pots inside. The incision was bleeding more than it should. Helen was pale, frightened. I muttered some soothing nonsense as I applied pressure to the wound. I looked at the monitor, *BP 90/60. He turned to look at the screen. He quietly put 2 fingers to Helen's wrist. That will be sufficient." He peeled off his gloves and stepped back. "Nurse, apply the pressure dressing and help Mrs. Smith out. She will not tolerate further intervention." Ben Graham was alone in the waiting room when I called him. He smiled at me as we walked, and a pang of guilt rang through me, though I couldn't say why. Helen Smith's blood had been cleaned off the couch, fresh paper marking the place where she had lain. Ben sat, looking embarrassed, like he was wasting the doctor's time. "Mr. Graham, your preliminary results were most reassuring. Today we will proceed with neurological screening. All being well, you should be an excellent candidate for intervention," said Dr. Skinner, opening his hands and smiling at Ben. The doctor pulled a latex glove over his long fingers. He ran his hand delicately over the instruments, touch lingering on the bone saw just for a second. He raised his eyes. "Nurse, shave and swab the scalp as indicated." I looked at the small circle on Ben's temple, marked in black ink. I didn't say no, not once. "Now, Mr. Graham, be sure to hold very still," the doctor said, pausing just long enough for Ben to nod again. There was a soft, gritty sound, like folded sandpaper. I stared hard at the monitor, feeling my bile rise. Ben's pulse spiked, then slowed. I held out the container and heard the plop as a sliver of Ben's brain dropped into it. Dr. Skinner slid off his gloves and collected the pot from my hands. He walked over to the processor, pressed a button, and delicately placed the container on the receiving tray. I looked over at Ben. His eyes were glazed, uncomprehending. Blood and clear fluid were seeping from the hole in his head. Suddenly aware I hadn't moved since he said my name, I forced myself to turn back to Dr. Skinner. The machine whirred and clicked. A light flashed red. My mind flashed back to the blood panels. Asterisk total tau protein, dementias. Asterisk, it means Nurse Porter. That Mr. Graham is not eligible. Michael Jones was already in the room when I returned from the sluice. He stood awkwardly, jacket held tight over one arm, reading a poster on the wall. He looked up as I entered, smiling nervously. "Am I in the right place?" The receptionist said it was this room. I wanted to scream at him to beg him to run, but I didn't. "Yes," I said, voice steady despite the pounding in my ears. "Dr. Skinner will be with you shortly." I smiled, gesturing at the couch. "Please, have a seat." The temperature in the room dropped. I looked back to see Dr. Skinner close the door and click the lock, shutting us in. "Mr. Jones." He smiled, pleased. "Thank you for coming in. You'll be happy to know that your results were exceptional." I wrapped the cuff around Michael's arm, avoiding his eyes. "Exceptional," Michael laughed softly. "That's a first." "Indeed," said Dr. Skinner. "Most people your age don't appreciate the importance of preservation. You'd be surprised how quickly things decline." "Yeah, I try to keep fit. Gym a couple of times a week, nothing mad." "Excellent. Yes, Mr. Jones. I was especially pleased to see that your neurological profile is intact. That's becoming vanishingly rare these days." "So what happens now?" Michael asked nervously. "Is it another blood test?" "No, please take off your shirt," Dr. Skinner said, barely audible. "Perfectly normal." The doctor purred. "Sorry, I skipped lunch. Probably didn't help." "On the contrary, fasting improves quality." Dr. Skinner placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. I watched, paralyzed, as the doctor's face shifted to reveal what lay beneath. The balding scalp rippled as the skin stretched. The features swam across the false face, rearranging themselves to make room. I stared in silence as the jaw unhinged. Rows of jagged teeth slid into place in the wet, pink gums. The mandible popped horribly as it dislocated. The thick red tongue lolled in the thing's mouth as it reared back, then lunged forward, clamping its jaws on Michael's thigh. The stink of metal hit me as teeth ripped into flesh, tearing the femoral artery open. Claret sprayed, coating Michael's torso and face. "I can't feel my leg. Is that normal?" he asked anxiously. "Perfectly normal." The thing gurgled, grinning with pleasure. Michael leaned back, grimacing in discomfort as he looked at the ceiling. "I hate coming to the doctors. Always makes me feel a bit queasy. You must think I'm such a wimp." The creature growled in ecstasy, crushing Michael's pelvis between its jaws. I heard the bones snap like twigs. "Do you know if I'll be okay to drive after this, nurse?" He turned to look at me. "I'll have to get my wife to pick me up." His voice trailed off as the doctor opened his abdomen. As it bit into the aorta, I watched the light trickle out of Michael's eyes. His expression was set, just a man enduring a mildly uncomfortable medical procedure. The thing fed. When it was done, it looked at me. The mask snapped back into place, and Dr. Skinner smiled at me warmly. "Now, Nurse Porter, shall we discuss your eligibility?" That brings us to the end of today's video. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe to join the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts or any changes you'd like to see in the comments below. Until we meet in another story, take care